Welcome back to Everyday Arrays. Today I've decided to make a video on how to fix a broken odometer on a 95 to 2003 Ford Rangers, Ford Explorers, Mercury Mountaineers, and Mazda B Series trucks, since they all share similar gauge clusters and suffer from the same problem, broken odometers. So there are multiple ways to fix the problem. First way is you can go to your local salvage yard, junkyard, whatever you want to call it, and buy another used gauge cluster from a same year or similar year Ford Ranger, Mazda truck, Explorer, or Mountaineer. The good thing about it is they're pretty affordable. The bad thing about it is you might buy one with a odometer that's not working, and then you'll have two gauge clusters with broken odometers. Problem number two with that is the possibility of you getting another used gauge cluster at your local salvage yard with the same mileage as the one that you have is not probably like 6 to 10%, so slim to none. The second way you can fix this problem is by buying a used gauge cluster online on a website such as eBay. The good thing about them is that you have a lot of options. There's probably like 20-40 gauge clusters for sale for a different price, and you don't have to go outside in the cold or in the heat and go anywhere. You just buy it and it'll come in the mail. Once again, there is a chance you can buy one that's not working, so if you do decide to buy another one, choose the one that's been tested. So there are multiple sellers that offer tested parts. They're more expensive, but in my opinion worth the money. And there is a third way to fix it, the cheapest way, but it requires a little bit of work. So here I have a gauge cluster out of my 95 Ford Ranger, and it's got a broken odometer. So what I'm going to show you today is how I'm going to fix it. So what I think the problem with this gauge cluster is this tiny worm gear, and you can buy them new online for like $7 to $25, so it's pretty cheap. So enough talking, let me go ahead and try to fix this one. So for that, you're going to need multiple tools. Step one is I'm going to take the cover off. The cover is secured by 7 screws. You're going to need a torque bit, a T15, a small extension, and a small ratchet. So I'm going to remove the 7 screws. Next, I'm going to remove the cover. Comes out very simple. Next step would be to remove oil pressure and battery gauge. For that, you're going to need a flathead screwdriver. All you have to do is just get right under there and carefully pry it out. Stuck in there. There we go. Out. Next, I'm going to remove fuel gauge and coolant temperature assembly. Same way with the flathead screwdriver. Very easy. So the reason I needed to remove these gauges is because these pieces cover up the main speedometer and odometer, and since we're trying to get to this one, they have to come off. Next step is to remove the speedometer and odometer assembly using a flathead screwdriver, and just pry it out very carefully. And there she is. All right. Next, we have to remove the needle. The reason you have to remove it is because this is what it looks like on the inside, and then there's a servo that we're trying to get out, and it goes something like this. There we go. As you can see, there are tabs holding it. This servo, that's where the gear goes, and we can't get to the those tabs from this side. We can only get to them from this side. Okay, so next step is to remove the needle. Make sure it reads 0, and you can use something like a fork. All you have to do is just get right under it, hold it by the stopper, and carefully pry it out. There she is. So the reason you needed to lift it when it would be on 10 miles an hour is because when you install it, if you install it sideways, if you pull it from like this way, the possibility of you putting it in the same spot would be slim to none. So once we got this out of the way, going to need a 5mm socket to remove these 3 bolts. What you have to do is you have to be real careful not to break these tabs 1 and 2. So what I do is I put it at the angle, and then the 5mm socket, extension, and a ratchet. Almost broke it. All right. They come out real easy. There we go. As you can see, half the gear is gone. Oh, actually, there it is. It was just laying on there. So that's what turns this gear like so, and this is how your mileage moves. So this piece is working correctly, but the gear is totally in pieces, and they're actually pretty brittle. Let me see if this one's brittle. Yeah, see, it's coming out, coming to pieces. So alright, so next step would be to remove the servo and to replace that gear. For that, you have to take something that you can pry on the tabs, and at the same time turn the servo clockwise from this side. So let's get this puppy started. And turn it and the whole thing will come out. There it goes. Next step, you gotta remove the gear. It just came to pieces. So next step would be to install a new gear. Real easy, you just push it in there and she's on. And reinstall it. But before I do, there's a tab right here and the tab right here, so you have to push this up on this side and push this up on this side. So let's put it back in there. And then turn it counterclockwise. Boom. Here we go, we got new gear. So next step is to bolt it back in. I'm gonna go home. And install 3 5mm screws. Next, going to install this back in its home. All we have to do is just lightly press it on there. You can install the gear indicator. I'm not going to be using it, but it is held by 2 tabs. All you have to do is just slide it in there. Piece of cake. Next, we get the coolant and fuel level. Goes in the same way. Then oil pressure and battery. As you can see, it's pretty simple. Alright, so next step is to install the needle. Hopefully the shaft of the servo motor hasn't moved. So what I like to do is I like to match it up with 10 mile an hour and then put it back on. But not all the way. The reason I slightly pressed on it is it's on there right now, but my next step would be to install it back in the truck and take it for a drive and compare my reading with a GPS on the phone. For example, if I'm doing 50 miles an hour and GPS showing I'm doing 50 miles an hour, then I come back, I press on it all the way and install the glass, and then completely install the gauge cluster in the truck. If I'm doing 50 miles an hour and it's showing 60, then I have to back it down by 10 miles an hour. So what you can do is you can go to 20 miles an hour, lift it up, and then install it, back it down 10 miles an hour. So I'm not going to do that. So that's pretty easy. So let's assume that it's working correctly. It's time to put the cover back on. Install 7 T15 screws. And tighten them up. Be extra careful not to over tighten them, because you can and you will crack the plastic off. So just make sure it's tight enough and you're good to go. It's that simple. So if you like this video, hit a like button. If you have some concerns, make a comment. And if you enjoyed this easy fix, have a good day.